Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm here with Aaron Rucker, who just top forward at the Philadelphia Regionals playing Metagross. And we're just going to go ahead and talk about the deck. So, Aaron, please tell us about the deck and what made you pick this over some other popular quote meta decks.
In this deck, we play pretty much a regular Metagross line. We play 4 Beldum, 2 Metang, and then 4 Metagross GX. If you notice, we played the Core Beam Beldum instead of the Beldum that has a retreat based on how many Beldums you have on the bench. That's solely because I know Weavile exists. And so we run a 4-2-4 and then a 2-2 Solgaleo line. We run 2 Lele, 1 Vulpix, which has the beacon, 1 Delmise, which is for a little bit of extra damage that hits pretty much perfect numbers. The baby Metagross as well. And then we have 4 Cynthia for draw support, 2 Lily for early game draw support, 2 Stevens, because if you go first, Stevens is busted. 1 Judge as some type of hand disruption for your opponent. Hala, because you use your GX like every second or third turn in any game. 3 Guzma, and then we played for consistency reasons 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Candy, 4 Max Potion because you want to constantly be healing any damage your opponent does to your Metagrosses. We also play 2 Rescue Stretcher. That's just because there's always a fear of people chasing down your Beldums or your Cosmogs. And then we play 2 Choice Band, yet again, for perfect numbers with Metagross, and some very specific numbers with Solgaleo. And then we run 8 Energy, 7 Metal, and 1 Psychic. And the question you had asked was kind of why this deck over other meta decks. So the night before Philly, me and my friends were testing a bunch of meta decks. We tested against Rayquaza GX, we tested against Baby Buzz Weavile, Baby Buzz Trashalanche, a lot of meta decks, or what we would consider the meta, Bulu, Vika, Duskmane, Magnezone, different stuff like that. And what I guess I realized is that for a lot of decks, they struggle to hit the 250 marker, and that in this format, a lot of decks can't handle hand disruption, so they don't play it. And basically, this deck just, once it sets up, it's consistently taking knockouts every turn, and once you set up the moving parts and the pieces, it can almost be any deck in my opinion. It hits 180, it hits 190, it hits 230, it hits 260, it hits the 270 number, and it can do whatever you need it to do as long as you're able to set it up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think a lot of people want to know is if the baby Metagross was pretty useful in this deck.
So the baby Metagross was an idea that I got from another list, and at first I thought that it would be extremely useless. I didn't really see the point in it. But baby Metagross helps in a few different ways. It helps in the baby Buzzwole matchup because what you're able to do is put down the Delmise and then use it to swing 70 into either a Slugma, a Sneasel, a Trubbish, anything that your opponent is trying to set up. You swing into it for 70, knock it out, and then if they bring up a baby Buzz, you're constantly just hitting 130 to one-shot things. And at the same time, the extend ability gives you the opportunity to Stevens Resolve and continue to set up your board in the back while also hitting perfect numbers and taking out one prizers. And it's also annoying for your opponent because they want to deal with it as a one prizer, because if it comes back, it's consistently hitting decent numbers. And if they do knock it out, it's a 170 HP one prizer. So it's difficult to deal with in a lot of situations.
Yeah, and I think the really crazy thing about this deck is that you're able to use Stevens Resolve in combination with that baby Metagross, not end your turn, search the cards you need, and then immediately evolve into a GX and then just go for the algorithm. So you're basically just searching out almost 8 cards out of your deck just for free.
Yeah.
Practically on a turn, so it really helps you set up. I guess my next question is, which GX attack do you see yourself going for most often? Do you always go for the algorithm, or do you sometimes Soul Burst?
So Soul Burst is never an option. The only 2 GXs I ever solely choose between is Algorithm or Tapu Cure. Tapu Cure being the other GX. So Soul Burst or not Soul Burst, my apologies. Algorithm is solely for turn 2 or turn 3. You judge your opponent to 4 cards, and then you're able to algorithm and fill your hand up to about 9 cards, 5 of them being exactly what you need. And if not, let's say we're going against a spread deck or something that causes a lot of damage to everything consistently, that's where you would rely more on Tapu Cure as long as you're able to set up. But majority of the time, I'd say like 95, 97%, you're using algorithm.
Okay, and from your experiences playing the deck, what would you say are your hardest matchups?
In my opinion, I think the most difficult matchups are Zork, Lycanroc, and any deck that has the ability to choose Guzma in its early turns and chase down your Beldums.
Okay, so just really aggressive
Aggressive
decks.
decks,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Did you ever use Anchor Shot on the Delmise?
Yes. So in the mirror match, I did see the mirror match. I used the Delmise to stick my opponent's Metagross in the active after they algorithmed because I'm pretty sure they didn't grab a Guzma. And then what it did is it set me up for a one shot with Solgaleo because I whiffed the choice band. And then there was another time that I was going against a Buzzwall player where once you add a choice band onto that Delmise, you're one shot in Buzzwall GXs, and it's very useful in the Baby Buzz matchup because you can also one shot Baby Buzzes and you can one shot Trash Lanches, and without a high count of items, they can't one shot you back because your weakness is dark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very useful. And the resistance to fighting is also very
Yeah.
useful. Also, so why Solgaleo GX and not like just a big basic attack like Ultra Necrozma or Dust Mane?
Yeah. So John Orgel ran Ultra Necrozma, and I think that his variation of this deck was amazing. Personally, I already thought, man, I'm running 4 candies. I'm running a 4-2-4 line of Metagross. I didn't really see an issue in running a Solgaleo GX. The first time that I ever built this deck when Metagross and Solgaleo first dropped, that's exactly how I played it. I played it with a 4-2-4 Metagross line, a 2-1-2 Solgaleo line, and 4 candies. Because your chances of hitting the pieces are high, especially when you can control what you put in your hand without any disruption of your hand. When N was in the format, it was a little more difficult, but now with it just being judged, it's a lot harder for people to disrupt your choice of your pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, now that you said the N is gone, there are a couple other disruption cards that we do see a lot of, especially the Mars Shadow that lets you just put both players to 4, and that could be actually really dangerous against Stage 2 decks. Like Stage 2 decks really fight to come back from that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that kind of problem, like against Mars Shadow? I mean, I'm sure it's been a problem that arises a lot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of decks that I went against surprisingly did not play Judge or Marshadow. They didn't see, I guess, a reason for it. Any Bulu player I played didn't really play Judge or Marshadow. Any Dustmane Magnezone player I played didn't play Dustmane or didn't play Judge or Marshadow. Rayquaza plays Marshadow, but they play one Marshadow. So if you Steven's Resolve, they're probably going to try to Marshadow you out of that. But then if you algorithm, they're probably they've already used their Marshadow. And so I think the one that I had the most difficulty with would be the Marshadow, and that was my top 4 match against Rukon because he knew to play it exactly when I would algorithm, which would create a little bit of difficulty for me.
Yeah. So now that the deck has been exposed, are you worried about fire decks, or is that a winnable matchup for this deck?
So fire is not something I've tested consistently. When Volcanion existed, I was able to beat that with variations of metal and grass. But the reality is, man, with the new Reshiram and stuff that's coming out, I highly doubt that fire is going to be something that we can beat with Metagross Solgaleo unless you just get a nasty setup and they dead draw.
All right. So another question is, if someone were to pick up this deck, just pick it up, card for card, and take it to a high level tournament, what matchup would you highly suggest that they test for?
I would definitely test the Baby Buzz Shrine Garbodor Weavile matchup. It's not easy, but it's definitely winnable. And I would definitely test the Rayquaza GX matchup because, yet again, that one is not easy, but it is winnable. That matchup, in my opinion, is actually a 50-50. It really comes down to who wins the coin flip and who sets up first. Because if they whiff Vikavolt, you're running through all their Rayquazas. But if you whiff Metagross, they're running through all your Pokemon. But the matchup that I found the most difficulty with would be the Zorak Lycanroc matchup. So I would say if you're going to test anything, test that matchup.
Okay, so what is it looking like for Memphis? Are you thinking about playing this deck in Memphis, or?
So I've definitely thought about it with a few changes, but I know there's a whole new set dropping, but it doesn't really seem that it's affecting the meta that greatly. So I guess we'll just kind of see what comes out and what we can put together and what might actually be good.
All right. And are there any cards in this deck that you want to change? Maybe like the supporter line or anything, or do you feel like it's pretty solid? I mean, to your play style.
Yeah, I love the supporter line. I love the counts of the fours, the 8 energy. I never really had an issue with that. The only thing that I probably would change would be finding room for a Cosmo. Yeah.